Down here is the quantum space and terminal series. So I will talk about n equal to 4 conformal supergravity. So this is basically the calculation of this work with considering and some future direction that I will tell in the end. The work in progress with Daniel Butter, Francis Area, and David. So this is the rough plan of my talk. I will first give some introduction of how to think of conformal gravity as a case theory, and then how one can extend it to the theory of conformal supergravity. And I will tell you about n equal to 4 supergravity and what are the problems there, and how we get around that problem. We will discuss the strategy that we use, and we will discuss some results, and finally we will take some related results. Okay, so let us first try to understand what is this conformal gravity. So basically what we do is we start with a case theory based on the conformal algebra. So corresponding to each generator in the conformal algebra, you introduce a gauge field and there's an associated field strength. So this is a gauge theory. You start with that. So for example, you have this conformal algebra. So there is a generator. This is local translation. This is Lorentz transformation. This is limitation, and this is spatial conformal transformation. And corresponding to each of these generators, you have these gauge fields: E mu A, omega mu A, B mu, and mu A. And there's an associated field strength corresponding to them. This is the gauge theory. So when you have a algebra, you just gauge it. That's what you do here. But then you want to realize this as a theory of gravity. Till that point, it was a gauge theory. For example, E mu A is a gauge field corresponding to local translation. But if you want to think of it as a real line, then you need to understand that it has to be invertible, and the local translation that you have should be realized as a diffeomorphism. There is no local translation in the theory of gravity. There is diffeomorphism. So you introduce those gauge fields, right? Now,
those apart from those Poincare indices, what are the other indices transforming under?
What are the other indices?
Transforming under. What is the gauge?
So there is a TA, and that corresponding gauge field G mu A, and there is NAB, and this corresponding gauge field is omega mu AB, and you have an algebra of these generators, right? Then you know how a gauge field will transform. That is basically, if you so if you have, in gauge theory, if you have this algebra, then you know the gauge field will transform as there. Whatever of these function you have. So once you know the structure function of the algebra, you know how the gauge fields transform. So till that point, it is just a gauge theory, just a normal gauge theory, not having any gauge theory that you know. Okay, but if you carefully look at it, the local translation, it will just all the fields will transform the local translation by the corresponding structure functions you have in the algebra. It will not look like a diffeomorphism. So that's the whole point. So you want to realize this local translation as a diffeomorphism, and not just local translation, because then you have a gauge theory and not a theory of gravity. So if you want to make it a theory of gravity, then you need to impose constraints, and those constraints will translate these local translations into diffeomorphism, and the real lines. So this local translation becomes general coordinate transformation, and local Lorentz transformation act on the tangent bundle of space time which you want to be for it to be a theory of gravity. And these are the constraints that we impose. These are called conventional constraints. So the curvature associated with P, you set it to 0, and the curvature associated with M, after contracting, the invert real line. Once you do this, then the real line becomes invertible, and then you can impose these other constraints. And these two constraints will give you will serve the purpose you want. So this is it. So if you impose this constraint, it means that the gauge field corresponding to the local Lorentz transformation MAB and K will not be independent. In that the gauge field associated with local Lorentz transformation becomes a spin connection, and that is given in terms of the wheel bind. And the gauge field corresponding to the special conformal transformation becomes also dependent.
Sorry, how do you get this constraint like this? You have to impose or you have to...
You impose these constraints. So, see, the first constraint of course gives you spin connection in terms of the wheel bind, and the second constraint gives you the special conformal transformation gauge field, the FE, that is the gauge field corresponding to KA, also dependent.
So, sorry, Larry.
Yeah.
Nothing about this. It's a probably down question. So usually if I have a gauge theory, I write down an action x squared. Trace of x.
Right.
So f is what you call r.
Yes.
And if I was to write down for any of these apart from p, trace of r squared is an action. Probably it has ghosts and it's just.
Sorry?
Probably it has ghosts and it's just not a well-defined theory. Because the Lorentz group is it's not compact, whatever the particle is, I don't know. It has negatives.
Yes.
Is that right?
You mean to say that if you just write it out the gauge theory, a trace of x squared?
Then it doesn't give a sensible theory.
Yes.
So the Ising-Hilbert action gets around that.
Yeah. And we'll see how the Ising-Hilbert action will come. We'll not actually write down trace of x squared to get the Ising-Hilbert action.
Of course, yeah. But in this language, would I need to get the Einstein-Hilbert action first to impose the top constraint? Is that?
Yeah. So this is we are right now we have not introduced the dynamical ingredients. It's just kinematics now. I mean, just the field contents and how to get the right field content that we require for theory of gravity.
So the top constraint gives me spin connections
in terms of the
line, and that's
right.
And the second constraint, where's K appearing? I thought E was the Vierbein and R of M was.
Yeah, Rn is the field strength is a curvature associated with the Lorentz transformation.
Exactly.
And that will contain the F mu A, the gauge field corresponding to special conformal transformation.
Why?
Because it is the spin connection will transform under K. Right? There is a non-trivial commutation relation between NAB and K.
Oh, I see.
Right? So when you write on the curvature, then you get the F mu A in R mu AB also.
I see. So any of these that don't commute, of course, the field strengths will package together.
Right.
I see. And this requirement of RM contracted with the Vierbein, that's gauge invariant? Because the Vierbein, the gauge field for E is not gauge invariant.
Yeah, so basically you have to change the transformation laws. After you impose the constraints, the transformation laws also gets modified. So they are no longer the transformation laws that come from the gauge theory. They get modified. And the way they get modified is like, the local translation becomes diffeomorphism. So psi A, the transformation with respect to psi A becomes the diffeomorphism. And so these constraints, they are not covariant constraints if you strictly demand that the original transformation laws are fixed. Because if the original transformation laws are fixed, these will not remain covariant. So you have to modify the transformation laws. So you have to modify the transformation law for omega, you have to modify the transformation law for F, and so on. And accordingly, you have to modify the curvature also. Because the transformation laws of omega is modified, so you have to modify the curvature also. So it's
but there's a procedure to do that. You don't just make it up, and there's a well-defined way to proceed.
Right. So
they are muted. That's it. Kapil, are you there, Kapil?
We are muted here for them, so they can't hear. I have no idea.
Sorry, one last question. If you impose this second constraint, having gauge, we've got it out here. This is conformal transformation.
We are muted for them, so they can't hear us.
If you impose this second constraint,
yes.
Having just gauge translations of the rest.
Hello, Shantana. Yeah, Kapil, it was disconnected, but from your side there was a mute, so I think now I can hear you. Okay. Kapil, whenever you're using the code, you can just switch to code.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah. So, what was the question?
This second constraint,
Yeah.
just having gauge translations of words with no conformals.
With no conformal.
What would it be?
Oh, so if you impose a second constraint, okay, then it will mean that you're just setting your Ricci tensor to 0.
Setting
Your Ricci tensor. Then this will
the
be a
second
Riemann
constraint
tensor.
becomes the Einstein.
Yeah, this Rn UAV just becomes your Riemann tensor. Right? Yeah, and then you are just setting your Ricci tensor to 0. But in conformal, this becomes Y tensor. The Rn UAV becomes Y tensor. And yeah, so
This sets Y tensor.
yeah, it becomes Y tensor once you impose this constraint. Once you impose this constraint, the K conformal gauge field, the K gauge field, it becomes dependent. And once you put that dependent gauge field into your expression of R in AB, this becomes a Y tensor. And this just means that the contraction of the Y tensor is 0.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I still haven't completed. So these are field strengths, you were saying?
Yes.
And so this looks like field strength equal to 0. So it's not like a Gauss law constraint. It's some stuff which it's because it's a first order action, that is why you have the field strength itself equal to 0. Is that
Yes, yes. I mean, we are imposing this constraint so that spin connection, the gauge field associated with the Lorentz transformation, that becomes a dependent gauge field, and just like a theory of gravity.
So is the first
This is like the torsion,
equation
yeah.
like the dE plus omega which E?
Yeah, this is the torsion. So the field strength associated with P is the torsion.
Is that equation?
Yeah, is that equation.
And the other equation is d omega plus
No.
What is that? What is this?
So
equation?
this is a different constraint that we put in a conformal theory of gravity. So this first constraint is like setting the torsion to 0.
So it's just d
Yeah,
E
right.
omega
Right.
E.
The other thing that you are saying is the equation of motion. That is not we are not putting that as a constraint.
Okay.
So yes, that's d omega plus whatever omega
Yeah, d omega
plus omega wedge E omega wedge omega
plus
is
omega
equal to
wedge
0.
omega.
That is the equation of motion.
Yeah,
Right?
right.
So that is not what we are putting as a constraint. The first constraint is the torsionless constraint. The second constraint is a constraint that we put so that your the special conformal gauge field becomes dependent, and this is essentially the contraction of Y tensor is 0.
Nice.
So if you
that
contract,
has something special about conformal.
right, that's special about conformal gravity.
Nice. Alright.
So if you do this, then your omega mu AV, the gauge field corresponding to MAP, and F mu A, the gauge field corresponding to K, they will be dependent. And then you can count the number of degrees of freedom. It will be 5. So you have to basically count the independent number of fields and subtract the number of symmetries. Then you will get 5.
This is all 4-dimensional count.
Yeah, these are 4-dimensional count. Yeah. So, however, for if you want to Poincare theory of gravity, the number of degrees of freedom is 6. So metric independent component is 6. 10 minus 4, that is 6.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you said if you introduce the what? Why would you
No,
use 6?
no. You need, if you want a Poincare theory of gravity, right? The number of degrees of freedom is 6 in Poincare.
What does a Poincare theory?
Einstein gravity. Einstein gravity. The number of degrees of, if you are just plain Einstein gravity, it is 6. Like 10 is the independent component of metric and 4 is the diffeomorphism. So 10 minus 4 is 6. Off-shell counting. I'm not doing any on-shell counting. This is off-shell counting.
How would you get gravity? So you should be able to get Einstein gravity by forgetting about D and K.
Yeah. You have to gauge fix those things, and we need also additional degrees of freedom, so that finally, after gauge fixing, we get Poincare.
Forget about D and K for now.
Yeah.
Can you get Einstein gravity by just gauging P and N?
No. So the procedure is we started with this conformal algebra, we gauged it, and then we imposed this constraint. Okay, after imposing this constraint, the total number of independent off-shell degrees of freedom is 5.
I understand. What would be nice, because I understand Einstein gravity, but I know nothing about conformal gravity.
Right.
So it would be nice if you said, I do these steps and I get Einstein gravity,
Yeah,
and now
yeah.
I do these steps and I get conformal gravity.
No, first, so I'm talking about this step because this will generalize to supersymmetric theories.
I understand, but is there a way to do these steps
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Einstein gravity?
Right. So first we do conformal gravity, and
Do we
then
first do Einstein gravity?
no. First we do conformal gravity, and then we get Einstein gravity from there.
There's no way to gauge P and M. There's no way to treat Einstein gravity as a gauge symmetry of P and M.
No. So that's and it's coming to that. So conformal gravity, the total number of offshore degrees of freedom is 5, and however we need one more degree of freedom so that we can get Einstein gravity from this. So that's what.
Sorry,
Yeah.
If I've got E and W, what I want to call the V-abide and the speed connection,
Right.
subject to the first constraint, is that not the same as the degrees of freedom of Einstein gravity?
No, but you have additional symmetries here also. You have special conformal and dilatation.
Forget about the conformal symmetry
right.
and just think about Einstein, just so I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Is that the same as gauging P and M?
Yes. So if you just want Einstein gravity, if you have only P and M, right, then you will only introduce the first constraint, you will not introduce the second constraint.
Good.
Right. So if you want only introduce the first constraint, then you will have 6 degrees of freedom.
I see.
Right. So E mu A is 16, and then there is only diffeomorphism and local Lorentz transformation. Right. 16 minus local Lorentz transformation is 6, and diffeomorphism is 4. So you get 6. Right. But however, if you are doing conformal gravity, then you have this E mu A is 16. This is independent. This is dependent. We don't count that. This is 4. So 16 plus 4, 20. This is dependent. We don't count that. And the number of symmetries. So diffeomorphism is 4.
I don't mind about the counting.
So
the answer
E
is
mu A is 16. E mu is 4. So that's total 20. And symmetries we have diffeomorphism 4, local Lorentz transformation 6, dilatation 1, and special conformal transformation 4. Okay, so this becomes 6, 4, 10, 12, 14, 15. So totally you have 5 offset degrees of freedom, 20 minus 15. If you are doing conformal gravity, if you are doing just, you are not getting these things, so you have only E mu A, which is 16, and you don't have these degrees of freedom, so this is 10. So you have 6.
So your dilatation, you added more degrees of freedom, but your constraints killed more than you added.
Right. Okay.
So I thought that the first level, 0th level answer to David's question was that, of course, it works in 2 plus 1, in a straightforward way, as Witten showed, is because then, the Vierbeins, there are 3 of them, and there are 3 of the spin direction guys. Okay, but this counting becomes 4 and 6 in 4 dimensions. Right? So as a result, you have to go through all kinds of things. For example, you can go to Escher variables, whatever, and such things in order to get the same number of degrees of freedom. So the number of degrees of freedom don't match of E and omega, so they cannot be canonically conjugated to the variables. So if you want to write down some stuff like Chern-Simons and so on, then it wouldn't work. Because E and omega in 2 plus 1 became phase-space variables in canonically conjugated variables. Then you have to go through a lot of this kind of complicated stuff. So 2 plus 1 was something special where this could be done.
Okay, so in order to get Einstein gravity or Poincare gravity from conformal gravity, we need 6 degrees of freedom. So for that, this is not sufficient. So we need to introduce an additional scalar field, and this scalar field will give the necessary degrees of freedom, and this will compensate for some of the symmetries. We use this scalar field to gauge fix some of the symmetries like dilatation, and so it is also known as compensator field. So we introduce this scalar field just so that we have the right number of degrees of freedom in order which is required for Einstein gravity.
Why do you care about off-shell degrees of freedom?
We are doing off-shell gravity. We are not doing on-shell. So this is
why do you care? Why not just write down some classical equations of motion that have two?
So off-shell, because we want to generalize this to off-shell superconformal
Let
gravity.
me pretend I don't care about super stuff.
Right.
Is there possible to write down a conformal theory without this extra scalar field?
Is it possible to write down? No, this extra scalar field will need to come down from conformal to Poincare gravity, conformal to Einstein gravity.
The question is there a theory that doesn't include this extra scalar?
No. So if you want to do in this way, first write down a conformal gravity and then from conformal come down to Poincare gravity.
No, I don't want to do that.
You don't want to do
is
that.
Is there a theory which doesn't have this extra scalar?
Yeah, of course. You can write down a conformal gravity, like you can write down R mini AB whole square as your action. That is conformally invariant, and that doesn't need a scalar, right? But that's just conformally invariant term that you can add to your action, but you don't get the Einstein-Hilbert term in that case. To get Einstein-Hilbert term is not conformally invariant.
Of course, yeah.
So you need to get the Einstein-Hilbert term. You need an extra scalar which you can use to gauge fix your extra degrees of freedom and come down from conformal to Poincare gravity.
So there's a theory of conformal gravity.
Yeah.
That just involves these field strengths.
Right. You can write down the theory of conformal gravity with all these fields.
So that is just wild tensor square?
Right, that's just the wild tensor square.
And is it sensible? Does it have ghosts as a classical theory?
Ghosts?
Is it a sensible classical? Is it good evolution in this theory?
Okay. You mean whether there are ghosts means whether there are imaginary terms in the poles of the propagator or something?
Oh, if you like, or are there kinetic terms with the wrong sign?
Kinetic terms with the wrong sign.
Yeah. So, for example, what he's saying is that the Einstein-Hilbert action, that if you write down, the kinetic term for that, then the conformal mode itself has the wrong sign of the kinetic energy.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you might say that if somehow I can eliminate from my theory the conformal mode, then I have gotten rid of that problem. Perhaps that's what. But you were doing wild tensor square.
Right.
Then this is a 4 derivative.
Right. This is a 4 derivative.
Then you might introduce some additional stuff which might have ghosts again.
Possibly.
Like if you have 1 over b to the power 4 plus b squared plus whatever it is, normally the roots of such a thing introduce tachyon and it goes like
yeah. I don't think it will have these features. I have not seen.
So how do you make sense of just conformal gravity itself? Let's say wild tensor square. Does it have sensible propagator somewhat?
This Nagarajan had a paper some time back. He had this wild square term and then somehow he did some kind of gauge fixing to get Einstein-Hilbert action.
From where?
Yeah, something was there was a paper that Nagarajan
He looked at, I think he maybe to set a space and put some boundary conditions on fusion activity, which maybe it was actually to set up to a minor sign it was to set a space, and then with some boundary conditions, he shows that these ghost modes disappear. So there's something called conformal gravity that's wild square. But this isn't what you're doing. You want to have 1 extra degree of freedom and to try to get
the Einstein-Hilbert terms out of that. So that's what we do. The scalar field has wide weight work under the scale transformation, and of course under any other transformation it doesn't transmit. There's no Lorentz, there's no DTO, nothing. So it only transforms under scale transformation with wide weight work, and you write down the conformally invariant action for the scalar field, and this is it. This is the conformally invariant action where d mu is the fully covariant derivative. So since it only transforms under scale transformation, so that is only d mu. But however, d mu also now d mu starts transforming under everything. In fact, under special transform transformation, they will also transform. So this will have all these things. And if you put it back here, and then you have omega mu AB and h mu A, and you put back omega mu AB and h mu A, whatever you got in terms of the independent gauge fields, and then you get the Lagrangian to be this, simply this. There is no b mu, there is nothing. So there is only E and phi, of course.
And which of your R's is that? You have 4 R's on the first page.
Yeah. These are.
Yeah.
This is the Ricci scalar. This is just the Ricci scalar.
What does that mean in terms of your 4 R's? It's the contraction of R open bracket
Right.
N with 2
So
E's.
no, it's not the contraction of. See, R mu AB is a wild tensor. So the contraction of that is 0.
So which ones are?
So you can separate out the Riemann tensor. I mean the Riemann tensor part out of that. This is the contraction of Riemann tensor and then the Ricci tensor.
So I know what all that means in Einstein gravity, but I have no idea what it means in your theory with 4 different
Yeah.
R's.
So this R is different from the R that I wrote down before. Perhaps I would have put a hat there. It would have been better. So that R mu nu AB that I wrote down is not the Riemann tensor.
This R can be written in terms of the previous R's.
No, that is the Y tensor. So if you contract the Y tensor, it's 0.
But could this R be written in terms of the previous R's?
You can extract the Riemann tensor out. So this is a Ricci scalar. Just a simple Riemann tensor you take and you, whatever you know about Ricci scalar that you.
Yeah, but I'm also confused by this.
Yeah.
So in this slide, what are your dimensional variables? So there's a phi.
There's a phi
and
and
then
there's
you have the Vierbein and you have the this spin connection.
Spin connection is dependent. So
Spin connection is dependent.
Yeah.
Fine. So then
only Vierbein and phi. B mu goes away.
So this R must be writable in terms of the Vierbein.
Yeah, of course. The R the same. Ricci tensor, the Riemann tensor is exactly the same. So whatever you know about R mu nu AB, I think this is a Riemann tensor. It's better you think of that R that I wrote down as an R hat, so that I can differentiate between these two. So this is simply del mu omega nu AB whatever plus omega nu NC omega B. So this is the simple Riemann tensor. This R mu AB. So this is, let me write as a curly R, and this R is just contraction of this.
So that's just the usual.
Usual.
T omega plus
omega
with omega.
Right.
That's your R2 form.
Yeah.
You impose that constraint. On that constraint, you are saying that you will get this spin connection.
Right.
So there should be some relation between the R's that you or the R hat that you're writing and the R over.
Yeah, you remove the trace.
Yeah, you remove the of course that is traceless.
Yes.
Right. So that contains Riemann tensor plus whatever Riemann Ricci tensor, metric and whatever. So that's the Y tensor. The R that I wrote before, that's the Y tensor. Okay. So that contains this and plus dots. So however this R that I wrote down here only contains the Riemann tensor part of that.
Now, so if you hadn't imposed those two constraints, would this R be gauge invariant? Or is it only
Or if you hadn't imposed those two constraints,
is it only
then if you hadn't imposed those two constraints, then and you introduce this thing, then you don't have
need to introduce that. Just a question about R.
just a question about R. This thing. So then R means Riemann tensor is not a gauge covariant object.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So the Y tensor is a gauge covariant curvature tensor.
What about
it's not a Y. If you don't impose the constraint, it's not a Y tensor also, because then F mu and these things are not written in terms of Vierbeins.
And what about the Ricci scalar? Is that gauge invariant?
Ricci scalar defined from this?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
But it is gauge invariant once you impose that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I see. So the second term, phi square R, is not gauge invariant, and nor is the del mu phi, but this combination of these is.
It is this is gauge invariant once you impose those constraints. It is gauge invariant. So So it's not that the combination is gauge invariant. Of course the combination is gauge invariant. So if you just you're right. If you just write this is not gauge invariant. It is this gauge invariant because you have contracted covariant derivatives. And you're right. This combination is gauge invariant after you impose the constraints, not without the constraints.
Because it's not clear that this d omega plus omega wedge omega, this construction, is gauge invariant.
Right. This is not, in fact, this is not gauge invariant. If you see, this R actually comes from this term. If you, because you want to contract mu and A, then this is F mu. And if you look at, if you solve for F mu A in terms of the Riemann tensor, and you write down F mu, then that is the R. You get the R from there only. And
So it just involves the amines, not some gauge in combination of the amines. Is that what you're saying?
Gauge is just a combination of.
Meaning there's something like mu, not like
mu,
not like mu. Does it involve the does it involve the field strength of F mu A?
No. So one can see that we have not even introduced any gauge fixing with respect to setting B mu to 0, but B mu disappears on its own. If you replace this omega mu A B and F mu A in terms of the independent gauge fields, that is in terms of the Weyl-Whites and B mu, then B mu will cancel out. And that's clear because B mu is the only field which transforms under special conformal transformation. In the whole bunch of fields that we have, independent fields, B mu is the only field that transforms under special conformal transformation. And that is the reason that it automatically cancels from everything once you write down omega mu A B and F mu A in terms of the independent gauge fields. Yeah. So finally, this is conformally invariant, but the special conformal invariance is trivial because the only field that was transforming under special conformal transformation has gone away from the action.
So this action depends on E and phi.
Yeah.
What other field is buried inside R? The spin connection.
E. Yeah, spin connection is given in terms of E.
I should think of that. So if I was to vary this to get classical equations of motion, I vary with respect to E and with respect to phi.
Yeah. So this, maybe I should say that this is just the spin connection which is depending on Weyl-Bind, because there is part of spin connection which also depends on BB.
Okay.
And that has cancelled with this BB already.
And so F doesn't appear either in this.
Yeah, F doesn't appear either because you have to replace F also by its equation of motion. I mean, not the equation, the equation you get from constraint. F is also given in terms of E and B mu. And omega is also given in terms of E and B mu. Once you replace that, the B mu get cancels out, and whatever is left comes here in the R.
So but this is just a conformally coupled scalar?
Right, it's the conformally coupled scalar, yeah.
So it's invariant under the whole conformal group, but special conformal transformations are trivial.
Yeah, special conformal transformations are trivial, because nothing is transforming under special conformal transformation. Right. So, right, fine. And then we use this scalar field to gauge fix the scale transformation. And once you do that, then you get your Poincare gravity. So this is the procedure of obtaining Poincare gravity from conformal gravity. Okay? And fine.
Sorry, can you? Yeah. The scalar had the right sign in its kinetic term or the wrong sign?
Yeah, at this sign. Yeah. But yeah.
What's your signature?
Okay, so yeah, I think because I started with this, and then I did an integration by parts to bring it here, so that's why it has the plus sign.
What is your signature, mostly plus or mostly minus?
Mostly plus. Yeah.
So this is the wrong sign, okay?
Yeah.
I think it's the right sign for the Einstein.
Is this a problem that Doctor was saying that you have
I think so. I mean, if you started from Einstein action and split this into the conformal mode and the rest of it, then the conformal mode appears with the wrong sign. This is what I seem to remember. Like if you're doing perturbative things, so H mu and put this to the trace part and the rest of it. So and the last thing that you're doing is gauge fixing. So you're saying that there is enough gauge freedom to fix the scalar itself, so constant.
Because it transforms under scale transformation, so we can use that scalar to gauge fix the scale transformation.
And only the Weyl-Bind dependent part remains.
Right, and that is how we get the Einstein-Hilbert action.
So what should I make of this fact? What should I make of this fact?
What shall I make of this fact? Okay, so this is a procedure that which we just did for pure gravity, and this procedure is adapted to supersymmetry. That's the whole thing. I mean, of course, you know how to write an Einstein-Hilbert action, but we want to supersymmetrize it. And off-shell, if you want to do it off-shell, you don't want to do it on shell. On shell, of course, from string theory you can do this. But if you want to do it off shell Poincare supergravity with n equal to 2 or n equal to 4 supersymmetries, then this is the best way to do it off shell, because
this is a tool to construct.
This is a tool to construct off shell supersymmetric theory.
Do you want to view it as anything more interesting than that? Is there any other interpretation of this that might have broader implications, independent of supersymmetry?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, off-shell supergravity is interesting, of course, because we know
no supersymmetry. I mean, this is a statement just about.
Right.
In fact, Einstein gravity is related to some conformal gravity.
Right.
Is there any? It sounds like it might be interesting.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't know. I know that this is generalized to supersymmetry, and so you have off-shell supergravity, which can be used, to compute exact quantum entropy and all these things using localization techniques. Off-shell supergravity is useful in that sense. Study macro entropy.
Conformal gravity is not interesting in its own right.
Conformal gravity is just the intermediate step to go to Poincare gravity. Of course, it could be interesting. Like for n equal to 4, I will discuss only conformal gravity, because there is no way to, at least not any known way to have some analog of the scalar field which can act as a compensator. We will discuss these things.
Let me ask you slightly. Is it possible that gravity in our world arises through this mechanism?
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that gravity in our universe is described by this theory? That would be interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, is it possible there's some fixed point which is conformal?
Okay.
And somehow what we see is some gauge fixed point. I don't know.
Some gauge fixed version of this. Okay. So you're saying that okay. So there's some conformal fixed point, and what we see is at least at this scale, it's not. Okay, I don't know.
I'm asking, is it possible? Is there anything wrong with that scenario?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't see anything obviously wrong there.
Yeah, whether Einstein gravity is some symmetry broken version
of
conformal gravity, where we are away from the fixed point.
We are away from the fixed point.
Einstein gravity. Right. This little demonstration. Yeah, so that would have been the fixed point action.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's gauge fixing, sorry.
Yeah,
it's not like the scale symmetry is broken. The scale symmetry is actually there.
Right. So the case.
So there is an ungauged fixed version of Einstein gravity, which looks like the stuff on your last slide.
Right.
And this Lagrangian
is gauge equivalent to this. It's a gauge.
There's something weird. I mean, the physics should be independent of your gauge choice. So here you picked one particular
gauge.
Another obvious gauge is phi equals 0.
Okay.
Then the physics looks very
different. Okay. So we are saying that it's less a potential which can.
No. I'm just saying that if you pick a gauge, then all physics should be independent of that choice of gauge.
Yeah, phi equal to 0 is.
Gets an effective estimate when it's something like the experiment. It gets some expectation.
No. That I said is wrong. It is not. It's
gauge by constant is a gauge transformation. So it might be something which fixes the values.
But in the real world, there is no scale symmetry as a gauge symmetry, right? I mean,
that's true. Right? You can imagine a high. Is a high energy. And this is what it would mean, right?
This is what it would mean.
So how is that possible? The choice of
phi equal to 0 is understand. Phi equal to 0 kills everything here. So there is some other non-trivial gauge. It could be equivalent. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe phi equal to 0 is not a good gauge choice. It could be like this unitary gauge. It's like the origin of the polar.
Phi only transforms under dilatations. That's
what phi only transforms under dilatation, right? Yeah.
So phi equals 0 should be as good as anything else.
phi has a homogeneous or inhomogeneous?
Oh no, sorry. This choice of gauge, of course, if I scale phi, I never get to phi equals 0.
Right,
I just get to phi
Yeah.
arbitrarily
It
close
is
to
a homogeneous transformation.
Yeah.
So phi equals
Right,
0
right.
is
It doesn't.
So phi equals 0 is not a good point.
Right. Because phi equal to 0 goes to phi equal to 0 under
Yeah,
scale. Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Actually, so yeah, it doesn't actually.
Doesn't break the
Doesn't
case,
break.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you get 0, which is anyway scaling variant.
Yeah, it's a singular orbit, so
Yeah.
I see.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. So phi. So we can also add terms to the Lagrangian theory of gravity sector fields. As I said, we can add this term. Here, this is the white tensor. This is the fully covariant Armini AB, and this is the white tensor square, and that's indeed conformally invariant. I don't know why it's a shifting in my thing. Okay. So one can we can also try to couple it to the scalar field and make it conformally invariant. But for that, you need at least 2 scalar fields, because scalar fields are having wild weight. So if you want to couple this term to the scalar field, you need at least 2 scalar fields, and so that you can write something like this interaction that S is phi 1 over phi 2, so these are the possible addition to your conformal gravity. So yeah, and of course, if you gauge fix one of the scalars to come down to Poincare gravity, then of course then you have some non-trivial coupling with respect to the other scalar that is there.
So I mean the Lagrangian, full Lagrangian is this term plus the covariant derivatives of phi 1 and the covariant derivatives for phi 2.
Yeah, you can do that. And then, of course, once you use one of the scalar fields to gauge fix to come down to Poincare gravity, then you have the other scalar field left, and that has a non-trivial coupling to the gravity sector fields. And these are the kind of actions which we will be interested in to supersymmetrize, because this has, if you think of it from the point of view of string theory, these are the kind of terms that you get. You don't get pure Wild square term, you get Wild square coupled to scalars. Action dilaton moduli. So those are the kind of terms we would be interested in.
The scalar in the denominator looks odd though.
The scalar in the denominator? This one?
Yeah. Is that the kind of thing you get from string theory?
I mean, finally, it's just one gauge fix was. Finally, you have one scalar field, one complex scalar field, right? So you can think of this phi 1 over phi 2 as one complex scalar field. Anyway, you're gauge fixing one of the scalar field, and then you have left with only one scalar field.
It's like a particular thing of CP1,
right?
In which you are writing it in terms of inhomogeneous coordinates, rather than phi 1 and phi 2, saying that there is a scale invariance in the theory in which phi 1 is going to lambda phi 1 and phi 2, then lambda phi 2 are identified with phi 1 and phi 2. So this representation is true only for phi 2 away from 0.
This is probably a bit of a diversion. There's a subtle theorem by Seiberg and maybe Bax. Maybe it's a folk theorem rather than a theorem. But it says you can't have compact target spaces in a theory of gravity and fluid dimensions.
Yeah.
So you can't have phi 1 over phi 2 being CP1.
I see. I see. All right. Then I don't know what example I can possibly have to justify the appearance of phi 2 in the denominator. This is weird, you would agree?
Yeah.
Unless you can say that this is a limited representation of something which is more sensible. Away from phi 2 equal to 0, it means something.
Okay.
My example doesn't work because of what David said.
So what was your thinking?
It's okay. I don't think it's relevant for your purpose.
Okay, finally we would like to extend this whole mechanism to conformal supergravity. So I'll just give it as a flow chart. So you start with the gauge theory of the superconformal algebra with some n supersymmetries, just E2,2/n, and then you convert the local translation into general coordinate translation by imposing constraints. So here, apart from those 2 constraints that we have for conformal gravity, there will be an additional constraint which will make the gauge field associated to S supersymmetry. So this conformal algebra, this superconformal algebra, apart from the conformal algebra that we had, has a Q supersymmetry and a special supersymmetry which we call the S supersymmetry. So apart from the bosonic part which we had discussed earlier, PA, MAP, P and KA, you have the Q supersymmetry and the S supersymmetry. And this constraint, so those two constraints will be there, which will determine your spin connection and the K gauge field in terms of the independent gauge fields. But there will be another constraint which will determine your S supersymmetric gauge field in terms of others. So after you impose this constraint, but here there is another step which was not there in conformal gravity, because once you impose this constraint, the gauge fields are not enough to. So the field contents are not enough, not sufficient, in the sense that you don't have so the field contents, you don't have the right number of degrees of freedom, which makes the bosonic and fermionic degrees of freedom to be same, which we need for a supersymmetric theory of gravity. This is flow.
It's supposed to happen automatically.
Okay, because this red light has come in this thing.
Oh,
Are you able to hear? I see this.
No, you're not able to.
I
No,
know
the red light actually means that it is muted now.
Now it's fine. Yeah.
Are you able to hear ICTS? Okay.
Okay. So you have to add extra fields to your theory so that you have the right number of degrees of freedom. The bosonic and fermionic degrees of freedom should match. So we will see this. So of course this is a complicated procedure. So you have to add number of fields. You have to modify your constraint. You have to modify your transformation rules, and in the end you get everything. This is a complicated procedure. I think it was done by. So it was done in the 80s. So for n equal to 2, so you finally get a Y multiplier. So you have E mu A, the gauge field corresponding to PA. You have psi mu Y, you have B mu, and you have the asymmetric gauge fields. This is a U1 asymmetry, this is an SU2 asymmetric gauge fields. So these are the gauge fields that are there, independent gauge fields. I'm not writing down the dependent gauge fields, which are your omega mu A B, F mu A, and phi mu Y, which is corresponding to S supersymmetry. So these are the independent gauge fields, but the number of degrees of freedom, if you count for the gauge fields, is not sufficient, and you have to add these extra matter fields. I call them matter fields because they are not gauge fields, but they belong to the Y multiplier. You have to add these extra matter fields to complete the multiplier, so that the bosonic and fermionic degrees of freedom are same. Similarly, for n equal to 4, you have this. So apart from the gauge fields, so here you don't have any U1 gauge field. There is no U1 asymmetry. There is only a C4 asymmetry. So that is there, and you have these gauge fields, and you have to complete this with these matter fields, so that.
What does V mu ij represent?
This is the SU2 gauge field here and the SU4 gauge field here. So this is traceless in I and j. So I runs from 1 to 2 here, and I runs from 1 to 3, 4 here. Okay. So this.
Then there's a chi I,
yeah,
which is just an auxiliary.
Yeah, these are. This is a fermion, and this is a TAP ij. This is antisymmetric in A and B, and antiserial dual in A and B. And there is a real scalar here, D.
Sin mu I. Sin mu I.
Sin mu I is the gauge field corresponding to Q supersymmetry, the gravity. And so here in n equal to 4, of course you have this TABIJ, which is similar as this. It's antisymmetric in A and B and antiself-dual in A and B. And you have IIJK, which is antisymmetric in I and J, and traceless in I and K or J and K. And there's a DIJK, which is antisymmetric in I and J and K and L, and traceless in any of the two cases. And B mu ij is of course SU4 gauge field, and this is traceless in I and J.
What happened to the A mu?
There is no U1 asymmetry in n equal to 4. There's only SU4 asymmetry. So these were found in this paper by Gottfried Deru and David in 1981. So let us see, like the counting is okay. So So if you look at n equal to 2, so these are the bosonic fields. So if you just count, so this is 16, this is 4, this is 4, this is 3 into 4, that's 12. And since this is antisymmetric in I and J, so you can pull it out like epsilon ij times EAB. So this has only 6. So of course it's 6 complex, but since it is anticellular, it becomes still 6 real. And D is 1 real field, so that is this. And these are the symmetries, the diffeomorphism, local Lorentz, spatial component, dilatation, U1 and FU2. So if you just count this number of components minus the number of symmetries, you get 24. Just do the counting, you will get 24. And for Fermionic fields, so if you see psi mu I, this is 32, this is 4, mu is 4, and I is 1 to 2, it's 8, and this is 4 component, and this is chiral, so 4 real, so that is 32 real, and chi I is 2 into 4, 8 real, and these are the symmetries. Q supersymmetry is 8, and S supersymmetry is 8, that's 16, so if it counts Fermionic degrees of freedom, that is 24. So they match. So if you remove the chi i's, A, B, and D from your field content, then your Fermionic and bosonic degrees of freedom won't match. And similar thing you can do for n equal to 4. Let's see that again. So if you do phi alpha is alpha runs from 1 to 2, so it has 2 complex fields, but it had this constraint also. If you see, it had this constraint phi alpha equal to 1. Okay, so it's 2 complex, which means 4 real, and there's 1 constraint, so that becomes 3 real for phi alpha. Eij is symmetric in I and J. So symmetric in I and J means 10, and it is complex, so 10 into 220. TABij is, you can count, it will be 36, so this is 6 here, and this is 6 here, that 36 real. And Dijkl is antisymmetric here and antisymmetric here, and stressless in any 2. So if you do the counting, you will get 20. EMUA is 60, BMU is 4, and this is 60. So this is 4 into 15, you will get 60. And these are the number of symmetries. If you count this and subtract with this, you will get 128. And similarly, for the Fermionic fields also, do the counting. Lambda is chiral, and L runs from 1 to 3, 4, so it's 16. And this is 80. It is antisymmetric between I and J, and stressless between equidistance, that's 80. And this is 64. And the symmetries, if you count, you will get 128. So the number of bosonic and Fermionic degrees of freedom for the Y multiplet in n equal to 4 is 128 plus 128. Okay. So you have the Y multiplet, and you know supersymmetry transmission laws also, that is derived in that paper. So you can go ahead and try to construct the action. So for n equal to 2, it was a very well-defined rigorous procedure was there, and that goes in this way. The Y multiplet that you wrote down for n equal to 2 is actually a chiral multiplet if you make the following identification of the fields. So it's like in terms of A, psi, B, F, I, and C, it transforms like a chiral multiplet, and in terms of the n equal to Y multiplet fields, this is given like this. And these are the curvatures, these are the fully supersymmetric curvature associated with these gauge fields. Q is the Q supersymmetry, V is the R symmetry, SU2 gauge field, and this curly R is some modified curvature which I have defined here. So in terms of these fields, this transforms like a chiral multiplet. Okay, and this chiral multiplet has SU2 index and Lorentz index. What you can do is you can contract the SU2 and Lorentz index and get another chiral multiplet. So this full how to multiply chiral multiplets is very well known. If you write down in terms of chiral superfield, it's very easy to see how the chiral multiplet components should multiply. And in terms of this, finally this W square, the highest component, this corresponding to what we have for CAPI here, for W square, this C will take this form. And there is another thing which is known as the chiral density formula. So if you have a chiral multiplet in the background of supergravity Y multiplet, then you can write down a density formula which is invariant, right? Invariant action in terms of chiral multiplet. So once you have that, this chiral multiplet, you can put it in the density formula and you get the action. And that action is nothing but the supersymmetries of a pure Y square term. I've just taken Y multiplet and square it. Okay, so you'll get the supersymmetrization of the pure Weil square term in this way. Okay, and but you can also get Poincare gravity. So analogous to the scalar field that I discussed in the case of pure gravity without supersymmetry, here you can have a vector multiplet. Okay. So n equal to 2, that's a vector multiplet which has 8 plus 8 optional degrees of freedom. So 8 bosonic and 8 fermionic. You can use that vector multiplet and gauge fix the additional symmetries to get a Poincare gravity, and so you can get Einstein-Hilbert term, and you can also get the supersymmetrization of the Weil square multiplied with f of s. But you need more vector multiplet. One vector multiplet is not enough. One vector multiplet you can only get Poincare gravity. But if you need more vector multiplets, you need to add more. So if you need one more vector multiplet, it's not a part of Poincare gravity, then you need to add 2 vector multiplets, and then use one of the vector multiplet as a compensator. Okay. So this is what you will do, and the whole thing is very well developed in n equal to 2. This whole thing is known as superconformal multiplet calculus, and this has been used to develop a lot of other types of higher derivative terms. I just discussed one particular type of higher derivative term and how to get it, but people have used to find a whole bunch of higher derivative terms for n equal to 2 supergravity in 4 dimensions. So yeah. However, for n equal to 4, the story changes a little bit, because for n equal to 4, the only known offshell multiplet is the Weil multiplet itself. There is a vector multiplet, but you don't have an offshell realization of that vector multiplet in n equal to 4. Okay, so if you want to do the whole program for as it did for n equal to 2, you won't be able to do that. So the discussion will be limited to the construction only conformal supergravity. You don't have a compensator to actually come down from conformal supergravity to Poincare supergravity. Okay, and also this superconformal multiplet calculus that we knew for n equal to 2 is not actually developed. This procedure is not developed for n equal to 4.
So you're saying for n equals 2, it would be understood as a way of implementing higher curvature corrections,
right,
in particular Weil square,
right,
with Einstein gravity as the zeroth order.
Right.
And in order to do so, you take this two scalars and sort of fix one of them.
Yeah, you take one Weil multiplet and you take more.
So you have your to begin with, your action is just Weil square,
right,
plus the 2 kinetic terms for the 2 scalar fields. I didn't see the 2 scalar fields.
No, okay, I didn't. So I said I have not been rigorous in saying this. So analogous to the scalar field, you have a vector multiplet here. So you can write down a vector multiplet action.
Okay.
You get the same thing. The vector multiplet also you can write down as a chiral multiplet and use in the density formula. So you can write down an action corresponding to the vector multiplet. That is the analogous to the kinetic term for scalar fields that we had. Okay. Right. So you have.
So that is the complex scalar field.
Yeah, that plays the role of complex scalar. No. So we had this real scalar field in the case of pure just gravity without any supersymmetry, right?
Yes.
Here we are replacing that scalar field by a vector multiplet.
Okay.
So we can use a vector multiplet. Again, we use this whole procedure of superconformal multiplet calculus. We can write the vector multiplet as a chiral multiplet, and we put that in the chiral density formula, and we get an action for the vector multiplet. So one of the vector multiplet you can use as a compensator to come down from conformal to Poincare gravity.
Yes.
So finally, Poincare supergravity will have 32 plus 32 degrees of freedom. 24 plus 24 coming from Weil multiplet, and 8 plus 8 coming from the vector multiplet. Nice. So that's Poincare gravity multiplet is 32 plus 32. Weil multiplet is 8 plus 8, 24 plus 24. But Poincare multiplet is 32 plus 32. 8 plus 8 is coming from the vector multiplet. So one of the gauge field that is there in the vector multiplet will actually play the role of the graviphoton field. So in Poincare gravity we have graviphoton, one gauge field that corresponds to the central charge generator, which we don't introduce in the conformal gravity center. So yeah, but if you want to have more vector multiplets in your theory, you can have But at least one you need to come down from conformal to Poincare.
And you were saying when you go to n equals 4,
Yeah.
okay, so
Yeah.
in the next slide, so there is no such understanding of this.
That is only a y multiplier.
Higher curvature correction,
Right.
standard.
Right. We can only talk about conformal supergravity in n equal to 4. There is a vector multiplier in n equal to 4, but that is on-shell vector multiplier. So the off-shell formulation, if you want to just have an off-shell formulation, we cannot have an off-shell formulation. We can have only on-shell formulation if you want to take into account vector multiplier and use it as a compensator and etc. etc. But if you are just interested in off-shell formulation, then only n equal to 4 you have y multiplied. You can, yeah. However, we will have analogous to this Fs RBDAB RBDAB because this y multiplied has the scalar fields. In n equal to 4 y multiplied, we have scalar fields. In n equal to 2 y multiplied, we didn't have any scalar fields. But n equal to 4, we have scalar fields. So we can actually supersymmetrize Fs times y square in n equal to 4. But to get the Einstein-Hilbert term, we don't have a vector multiplier to get it by Einstein-Hilbert term. Yeah. Yeah, but the problem with n equal to 4 is this superconformal multiplier calculus is not very well developed. In the sense, I mean, like in n equal to 2, you had a y multiplier, you can, write down a chiral multiplier. From that y multiplier, you had a density formula which you can use to write an action. This whole formalism is not there in n equal to 4. So even the n equal to 4, even though the n equal to 4 y multiplier was known in the 80s, nobody knew how to write an action. N equal to 2, in that paper itself they wrote down the action. So they knew all this multiplier calculus. So, but n equal to 4 they only gave the multiplier. But in 1985, so he took this on-shell vector multiplier and he coupled to this n equal to 4 y multiplier. And he wrote down an action and he got the Einstein-Hilbert term and etc. etc. But since the vector multiplier was on-shell, it was not an off-shell theory. However, what they did, and cycling, what they did is they took that action and they integrated over the vector multiplier fields. So they integrated over the vector multiplier fields and they argued that the divergent part of the conformal anomaly is one loop exact, okay, and it should be given by the n equal to 4 conformal supergravity action. Right? So this is what they did, and from there they derived the nonlinear form of the bosonic part. The bosonic part of the conformal supergravity action they derived. Okay. And what we did was we went a step further to actually develop a strategy by which we can develop the full action, including the Fermionic terms, and then we use our action to check with that result. Okay, and I will discuss those things. Okay. So let me start by strategy. What we did. Okay. So first, there was a starting point. So the starting point we got from generalizing the linearized results of Berkshire, Delhu and David in the 1981 paper, where they had the n equal to 4 y multiplier. They also wrote down the linearized actions. At the linearized level, it was okay because linearized level the y multiplier was a chiral multiplier. They could write it as a chiral superfield, and do a superspace integral, chiral superspace integral of that, and they could write down the linearized action. Okay, so the linearized action was okay, but they couldn't, take it to a non-linear level. So what we did is the following. So we took the linearized action and made some modification. Okay, in the sense that we uplifted all the partial derivatives to covariant derivatives, to fully covariant derivatives, and we put the covariant derivatives in such a way that the terms themselves were invariant under spatial conformal transformation. So in a sense that we could choose to put this derivative here. Okay, like write it as dA, dA, Bij, dC, dC, Dij. Okay, that is still, if you write it as a linearized thing, it will still give the linearized result of that. Okay, but that term won't be invariant under spatial conformal transformation. Then you need to add some term with a spatial conformal gauge field. Okay, so we took the linearized action, we shuffled the derivatives in such a way that we put the derivatives in such a way that the terms by themselves are spatial conformal invariant. Okay. And there is one subtlety about the scalar field, because their scalar field they wrote down in terms of the physical scalar, there was one complex scalar at the lineage level. At the non-linear level, of course, we have this phi alpha, okay? But at the lineage level, there was one scalar field that is just, a particular gauge choice of this phi alpha. So I think when I gave you this n equal to 4, so if you see that there is a U1 here, I didn't mention this, there was a U1 here which is not a part of the R symmetry. It's not a part of the R symmetry. This U1 comes as a spurious symmetry in n equal to 4, just because the way you choose to write down this Y multiplier in terms of phi alpha. So phi alpha has 3 components, okay, but it transforms non-trivially under a U1, and that U1, if you gauge fix that U1, you will get the physical scalar, which will carry only 2 components.
Where did you get this U1? This is equal to 4.
This is n equal to 4. This is not the R symmetry. Okay, so this is just a spurious U1. This is a U1 coming out precisely because of the reason you choose to write out your fields. We didn't choose to write in terms of a complex scalar, because in that case this thing becomes very complicated. You don't have a very nice way to write down those variations, supersymmetry variations. Okay. So if you write in terms of this scalar fields phi alpha, this variations closes very perfectly. But because there's one component which is this is just 3 component, whereas the physical scalar has 2 components. So there is this additional U1 that is there because of the choice of your field conditions.
This phi alpha.
That constant is there, but that constant makes it from 4 to 3, right? But there are 3, after that constant there are 3 scalar fields, but physical scalar fields are 2, right? So this phi alpha has a non-trivial transformation under a global SU1, and local U1. Okay. So we will gauge fix this local U1 to get the physical scalar. So that finally you have physical scalar which are 2 degrees of freedom. But there is a non-trivial SU1, that acts on this phi alpha. Okay, that will still be there in your theory. We can ask whether our action is invariant under the global SU1, or not. Okay. So fine. So that U1, yeah, fine. So okay. So at the lineage level, it was written in terms of the complex scalar C. Okay. So we want to write down something. Some term which in a particular gauge, if you go to the lineage level, you get that what David et al. Had in their paper. So this was, after a lot of work, we could write down this term which if you gauge fix to a particular gauge and write down in terms of the physical scalar, at the lineage level you get what David et al. Had. Okay. So this is our starting point, which is if you just count the number of fields without counting the number of fields explicitly there inside the covariant derivative or inside the curvature, so it's a quadratic term. Okay, so that is how we will count the number of fields. So if you just count the number of fields without counting the explicit gauge fields present inside the covariant derivatives and the curvature, so these are all quadratic terms, right? 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and so on. Okay. So this will be our starting point. Okay, and we will develop a strategy to use this as the action starting point and then build on this. Okay. So what we will do is we will take an answer for our action, okay, in which the explicit gauge fields that are appearing are your gravity nu and the S supersymmetry gauge field. So we will break our Lagrangian in this way, and we will be slightly less ambitious. We will find out the action of the quadratic infermions. So that otherwise it becomes huge. So we will find our action of the quadratic infermions, which means that this L0, which is the covariant part, contains terms up to quadratic infermion. Okay, and since this M is coming with a gravity nu, which is already one fermion, so M will be up to linear infermion. Okay, similarly this N, this is coming with 2 fermions already, so this will be purely bosonic. And similarly here also. This is coming with S gauge field, this will be linear infermion. This won't come in our picture. And the way I can argue is this: phi A I has Y weight 3 by 2. So 2 phi's will have Y weight 3. Okay. So, but the whole thing has to need to have while weight 4. Okay. The whole, because it's a part of the Lagrangian, so it needs to have a while weight 4. The whole thing. So this is 3 by 2. This is 3 by 2. So this is 3. So this n double prime that I had written down can have at most while weight 1. Okay. But our bosonic fields, they all have maximum while weight 1. Okay. Right. But this needs to be at least quadratic. Right? All these n, m's that are appearing here, they need to be at least quadratic. So there is nothing that you can write down with pure bosonic terms here. So this will be higher order in fermion term. So this we will not get in our field. So we will only truncate up to here. There will be a term linear inside, there will be a term linear in phi, there will be a term quadratic inside, and there will be a term mixed, one psi and one phi. Okay. So, and then we will use various equations that will represent cancellation of Soucy variations. And we'll use those equations iteratively to build up action in an order fashion.
So this kind of truncation is gauge interrange.
So this will be, if I truncate up to here, okay, and I use my Soucy variation to build this up to quadratic in fermion. So if you consider only variations, supersymmetry variations up to linear in fermion, then you will get invariant. But there will be supersymmetry variations which will be cubic in fermion, right? Then those terms will hang around, and you need those additional dot terms to cancel them.
Okay. How about these gauge transformations?
Yeah, because if you just take Q supersymmetry variation, invariance under Q supersymmetry variation, then it automatically implies invariance under other gauge transformation because of the algebra. So we'll just use Q supersymmetry, and yeah, right. Yeah, so these are the basically the equations which we can derive from these answers. So first we will use equation which supersymmetry coming from the supersymmetry variation which contains only covariant terms. Okay, and I can write them down as this. So yeah, I can explain how this comes from these answers, but I think it will take some time. But yeah, so yeah. So something I can say, for example, this term, this DA-MAI, the way we get this is, if you look at these answers, this term, psi bar AI-MAI, psi transforms as DA epsilon I, right? So psi transforms as psi transforms as 2DA epsilon I. Okay, so if you put that, and this dA is only bosonic covariant derivative, so if you put it here, and then you do an integration by part, you bring the dA here, then you add and subtract Q and S supersymmetrization to turn this dA into the full dA, right? That is how you get this term, and the term that you have added and subtracted, those were depending explicitly on the gravity no and the S supersymmetry gauge field. We will consider them when we look at variations with the explicit gravity no and S supersymmetry gauge field, and so on. And this term comes from the covariant part of the supersymmetry variation of psi. So if you look at the supersymmetry variation of the gravity no, that contains an explicit covariant part, which is this, and that will come here. And these are covariant. So this is some shorthand notation I have written down. So if you look at the covariant part of phi ai, I write this as phi a I j epsilon j plus phi a I j. And if you look at the variation that is there in the paper by Bindusar Sahoo and Jeru, then there is a explicit form of this phi a and this phi a. I don't want to write it down, this is too huge. So I just use this shorthand to write down the equations. Okay, and this is how you will get the equations which comes from the supersymmetry variation of that answers that contains only covariant factors. Okay, and then this is the supersymmetry translation containing one K gauge field. Okay. And that is coming from, as I said, when I do this integration by parts coming from this, and I add and subtract Q and S supersymmetrization, and also K K covariantization. So that comes from here. That comes from there, and the S gauge field also transforms like this under Q supersymmetry, and that comes from there. Yeah, so I don't know actually. If I cannot explain this very detailed, so it's huge. Do you want me to explain this? Like how much time I can go on? Because this is going to take a lot of time.
So normally around 1 o'clock is when
So I just wanted to. I can tell you in if you want, I can tell this to you in my bit of time. But I just wanted to tell you that from these answers, okay, I can write down some supersymmetry cancellation equations, like containing only covariant terms, then containing one K gauge field, then there is a equation containing one gravity no, and then there is an equation containing one S gauge field. Okay, so these are the equations. I can explain all the terms in this equation and how they come, but I don't have time. But how we use this equation in an order by order fashion. So let's see how we use this. For example, if I want to use the first equation, I had a starting action which was quadratic in the number of fields. Okay, so that will give a variation which will be quadratic. Okay, and so all, as I said, all the terms here are at least quadratic. So this MAI, this N prime, this M prime are all at least quadratic. Okay, so in this equation, so if M is quadratic, then this term is cubic, right? M is quadratic, there is one T here that makes it cubic. This M prime is quadratic, and there are at least one field in this phi dagger, so that makes it cubic. N is quadratic, there is an RQ here that makes it cubic. Okay, so all these terms are cubic. So if I take the first term, which was my starting action, and take its supersymmetry variation, okay, then I can read off what this MAI quadratic will be. Okay, right? And then use that MAI quadratic here to get my M prime AI quadratic. Okay, and then finally I can use that M quadratic that I got there and L0 quadratic that I had to find what my N quadratic will be. Okay, N quadratic will be, and from here I can find out what my N prime quadratic will be. Okay, so this is one layer of computation. Starting from the starting action, this quadratic action I found out what is N quadratic, what is N prime quadratic, what is N quadratic, and what is N prime quadratic. Okay, and then again go back there. So I have M quadratic, I have, so I want to cancel the cubic variations. Okay, I have M quadratic, so these are cubic, 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 these are cubic that I know. Okay, L0 quadratic I know, that will give rise to some cubic variation. Then I have to guess what cubic terms I can add to this L0 so that the cancellation of everything that I know will be of this form. From there I will read off my M cubic and again go through the same procedure to find M prime cubic, N cubic, N prime cubic. Okay, and then again, so it's an iterative procedure. So these are different layers of computation. First I complete all the quadratic terms, then I complete all the cubic terms, and then finally I complete all the quadratic terms. Okay. And yeah, not finally, then I have a quintic term also. So there are these 4 layers of computation. Okay. So after doing that, okay, we got a huge action. What I will do is I will only give you the results from the only containing the bosonic part. And these are the bosonic part of the action that I got. That we got. Okay. So yeah. Right. So this is these are the interactions. I am not writing the quadratic terms that I have already written before. So these are the cubic and quadratic terms involving the bosonic fields. This PA and P bar A I had already written before in terms of the scalar fields. If you remember, so this is P and P bar. Given in terms of the scalar fields. Okay. And you can see that I have this alpha and beta contracted, so these are SC1, 1 invariant. So this phi alpha transforms into the global SC1, 1. Okay, so these are SC1, 1 invariant. So these are our interaction terms, and we compare this with what Binder et al. Had. We first put it in the form we want, and they are written in terms of the physical scalar after gauge fixing it, but we can retrace it back and write it in terms of what we want. And indeed, we had a lot of differences. Okay, so we had a lot of email communication with them. We could point out some it was not much. There were some algebraic mistakes in the paper, and which Cyclin also realized once we had a communication with him. So finally, after taking into account those mistakes that they did, the computational mistakes that they did, they also agree with our result finally. So yeah, so this is our bosonic result. But this is, if you can see, this is SU1, 1 invariant, as I said. Even in the quadratic part, we had this R hat without any. If you see this, we had R without any Fs. So the whole thing is SU1, 1 invariant. Okay. Yeah. So the whole thing that we wrote down is SU1, 1 invariant, and there is. Yeah. But we can do better. So we can. So this is a work in progress. So we can try to obtain a general action where this SU1, 1 invariance maybe is broken. So that is, can we obtain this more general class of action where this manifest SU1, 1 symmetry is broken, and this will be like a supersymmetrization of Fs R linear B, R linear B. Okay. So the idea is that at the linear level, as I said, that this Y multiplet is a chiral multiplet, because of which they could write down that full action using, just putting it in the chiral superspace integral and writing it. But once you go to the nonlinear level, so this chiral multiplet structure is broken. You don't have this C anymore. That is replaced by this cosine scalar. But this phi alpha is cosine scalar. So it is parameterizing this SU1, 1, and it has some non-trivial transformation on the U1. So that is the cosine scalar, and this chiral multiplet structure is recovered of the linearized Y multiplet. You can recover by going to a particular gauge. You can recover this, but at the nonlinear level, this structure is gone completely. So the question we would like to ask is, can we recover this chiral multiplet structure at the nonlinear level also? And it seems that we can do this where we start with some arbitrary function of this cosine scalar and use supersymmetry variation to just build the chiral multiplet. And it seems that we can do this if we can. For example, we can start with an arbitrary function as the lowest component of this chiral multiplet. Let us assume that it has some chiral weight. Okay. If it has a chiral weight, then I can write it in a more general form as this. But S is phi 1 over phi 2 again. I can write this. And psi I mean, we do some preliminary calculation and we can write down different components. Perhaps if you are able to complete this and you have complete the chiral multiplet first and then have an action principle like we have for n equal to 2 this invariant density formula. So have to find out some action principle like this for n equal to 4. And once we have the chiral multiplet and action principle, maybe we can put it and get the action, which will be a more general class of action than what we have now. What we have now is manifestly preserving this SU1, 1 invariance. This will give rise to a more general class of action, and maybe what we have now will come out as a special limit of this. So, yeah, so there are many questions. Is this chiral weight that we took for the chiral multiplet arbitrary, or will there be some restrictions on this C? And is there any restriction on this, the potential Fs that we do? So this Fs was coming here, right, which will appear in our action. So whether this is arbitrary or whether, and most probably this Fs will come with this pi square term. And the question is whether this is arbitrary or there is some restriction on this Fs. So, yeah. Thank you.
Have we lost connection with those guys? So, does ICTS have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, does DIFR have any questions?
For this, at least for quantum entropy function calculation, you still need to add some vector multiplet stuff.
Right.
That is still no progress anymore.
No, I don't
Much
think so.
harder.
Because vector multiplet is not off-shell. But I don't know how these things go, but I talked to few people, maybe they said that maybe you can use the on-shell vector multiplier to do it, but I don't know how. Because I think quantum entropy function you need the off-shell vector multiplier.
That's what I understood from
Right.
You have to have a queue and an action.
Right.
Option.
Right.
Bookbinders, they did it in the on-shell formalism.
Huh?
Bookbinder and
Cycling.
They
They took the on-shell action for the vector multiplet. So there you had this action of vector multiplet coupled to supergravity, but the vector multiplet was on-shell. But the while multiplet was off-shell. So they wrote down the vector multiplet action in the background of this while multiplet. Okay, so what cycling et al. Did is they integrated over these vector multiplet fields. And they obtained a conformal anomaly term, which they argued to be conformally invariant, containing only the while multiplet fields. So that will be their conformal supergravity action. And in fact, they are correct, except few algebraic mistakes, they were right. Once you fix those algebraic mistakes, they will get what we got from this order by order calculation.
For n equal to 8 supergravity actual practice calculation where it is cool. Like this optional does it mean like the same from the calculation of the quantum entropy function you have to have an optional formulation for n equal to 8 or another basis.
Oh, yeah, optional. The n equal to 4 is the last then you can have an optional formulation. Yeah, that's probably. I mean, with finite number of fields you cannot have. Maybe you have to add infinite number of these higher spin fields and so on to get an optional formulation. Yeah, I don't know. Like for n equal to 2 also, a hypermultiplex is on shell. You don't have an optional formulation, but then some harmonic superspace guys who do it in optional formulation, but in superspace, harmonic superspace. If you do it in component thing, then maybe you need an infinite tower of fields.
In that Atish's paper, they actually just neglected that hypermultiplier by saying that it would contribute for the same group. So they didn't have to bother for this option. But say that there is no optional.
There is no optional hypermultiplier. In n equal to 4, also only while multiplet is on option, and after that there is nothing option.
In that competence, there are still several loops and loopholes that still finish in that exact.
Okay, let's thank Bindusar again.